Welcome to today's World News Update for May 20th, 2023. Here are the most important stories from around the globe. China is calling in loans to dozens of countries. Russia may lack reserves to respond to Ukrainian counteroffensive. A preserved Amazon rainforest worth $317 billion per year. The 9 hours in which Spain made the 100% renewable dream a reality. Hundreds of millions of life years lost to COVID pandemic. Climate crisis worsens in Somalia. British Columbia's last chance on northern spotted owls. 88-year-old Australian doctor freed 7 years after kidnapping. Erdogan vows to keep cutting rates. Stay informed and stay safe, and join us tomorrow for more world news updates. China is calling in loans to dozens of countries. A dozen poor countries, including Pakistan, Kenya, Zambia, Laos, and Mongolia, are facing economic instability and possible collapse due to the burden of hundreds of billions of dollars in foreign loans, primarily from China. An analysis by the Associated Press reveals that these countries are struggling to repay their debts, with debt repayment consuming a significant portion of their tax revenue and depleting their foreign currency reserves. China's reluctance to forgive debt and its secretive approach to disclosing loan terms have prevented other lenders from stepping in to assist these countries. The situation has led to defaults in countries such as Zambia and Sri Lanka and has had severe consequences, including job losses, inflation, poverty, and political upheavals. Experts warn that unless China eases its stance on these loans, more defaults and economic instability may occur, with long-lasting effects on global geopolitics. Russia may lack reserves to respond to Ukrainian counteroffensive. Western officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, have stated that Russia's forces in Ukraine are significantly depleted and may lack the reserves to effectively respond to a major counteroffensive from Ukrainian troops. Russia is said to lack a dedicated reserve force to react to a large-scale breakthrough by Ukraine. The weakened state of Russian forces and the readiness of Ukrainian forces, supported by Western assistance, are seen as increasingly favorable for Ukraine. However, there is no certainty about the success of the counteroffensive. The key objective for Ukraine is to inflict battlefield defeats on Russian forces to change President Putin's view of the war. The officials caution that breaking through Russia's lines is a monumental challenge, but the cognitive effect from battlefield activity may be more important than territorial gains. Russia reportedly has over 200,000 troops in Ukraine with formidable defenses, while the quality of its troops, training, and morale are questioned. Recent local counterattacks by Ukraine near Bakhmut may be part of the broader counteroffensive strategy. The territorial gains in Bakhmut are small but aim to force Russia to divert forces and thin their defenses for a larger assault. These assessments are based on anonymous sources and should be treated as unofficial until confirmed by more reliable information. A preserved Amazon rainforest worth $317 billion per year. A recent report by the World Bank proposes a development model for the Brazilian Amazon region that combines ecosystem preservation with economic growth. The bank calculates that the Amazon rainforest is worth at least $317 billion per year due to its ecosystem services, biodiversity, and role in regulating the global climate. The report suggests investing in strategic cities in the region to increase urban productivity and provide better living conditions, reducing the need for exploitative activities in the forest. It identifies 20 cities that could be transformed into economic hubs. The bank emphasizes the importance of forest protection and proposes measures such as combating illegal deforestation, granting and regularizing indigenous lands, and providing loans for small-scale producers practicing sustainable agriculture and agroforestry. The bank warns that deforestation is pushing the Amazon to an irreversible point with detrimental effects on its ecosystem services. The 9 hours in which Spain made the 100% renewable dream a reality. On a typical weekday, Spain's renewable energy generation surpassed 100% of the country's electricity demand for a record 9 hours. The achievement was made possible by a significant increase in renewable installations, particularly solar and wind power, as well as favorable weather conditions. The milestone highlights the country's progress in reducing its carbon footprint and lowering electricity prices during daylight hours. The excess renewable energy was exported to neighboring countries and used to power pumped hydro plants. The event underscores the need for improved interconnections, energy storage, and accelerated electrification efforts. The temporary closure of 3 nuclear reactors also contributed to the increase in renewable energy generation. With further expansion of renewable capacity expected in the coming years, Spain has a significant opportunity for hydrogen and electric vehicle integration, particularly during the central hours of the day. Hundreds of millions of life years lost to COVID pandemic. The World Health Organization, WHO, has revealed that the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in the loss of nearly 337 million life years during its first 2 years. This means millions of people died prematurely, leading to a significant reduction in the total years that would have been lived. The WHO's annual report also highlights the increasing threat of non-communicable diseases, NCDs, such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. The pandemic disrupted various health indicators and deepened existing inequalities in healthcare access. The report emphasizes the need for increased investments in health systems and a focus on addressing NCDs to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Despite reductions in certain health risks, the prevalence of obesity and exposure to air pollution remain high. Climate crisis worsens in Somalia. The town of Beledweyne in Somalia has experienced severe flooding, displacing almost the entire population. Heavy rainfall in Somalia and the Ethiopian highlands caused flash floods, forcing nearly 250,000 people to leave their homes. The flooding has worsened the already challenging situation in Somalia, which is suffering from a severe drought. The recent precipitation, although significant, will not fully alleviate the impact of years of below-average rainfall. Local defensive measures, such as a protective wall, were unable to withstand the force of the water. Displaced families are seeking refuge in overcrowded homes, with concerns that the rising water levels may necessitate further relocations. The flooding has disrupted lives and livelihoods, leaving people uncertain about their future. The situation highlights the vulnerability of communities in the face of natural disasters and the need for urgent assistance and support. British Columbia's last chance on northern spotted owls. The northern spotted owl population in British Columbia has significantly declined due to habitat loss from logging and competition with invasive species. Only one female owl remains in the wild, and the species is on the brink of extinction in Canada. The SPOZM First Nation, along with other advocates, is calling for the protection of old-growth forests and a halt to logging. Despite efforts to release captive-born owls into the wild, 2 males recently died, highlighting the urgency of the situation. The decline of the spotted owl reflects wider imbalances in the ecosystem, and preserving old-growth forests is crucial for the survival of other species and combating climate change. While there have been some policy changes and calls for action, significant progress has yet to be made on the ground. The recovery plan implemented by the province is criticized for not addressing the impact of clear-cut logging on young dispersing owls. Calls for federal intervention have been successful, with indications that the government may enact measures to protect critical habitat. The recovery of spotted owls goes beyond numbers and holds cultural significance for indigenous communities, highlighting the need to restore balance and recognize the co-stewardship of the land. 88-year-old Australian doctor freed 7 years after kidnapping. An 88-year-old Australian doctor named Ken Elliott, who had been held captive by Islamic extremists in West Africa for over 7 years, has been freed and has returned to Australia. Foreign Minister Penny Wong confirmed that Elliott was safe and well, and he was reunited with his wife and children. Elliott and his wife were kidnapped in Burkina Faso, where they had operated a medical clinic for 40 years. His wife, Jocelyn Elliott, was released 3 weeks after the abduction. No ransom was paid for Ken Elliott's release, and further details about the operation were not disclosed. The militant group responsible for the kidnapping was Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, known for its kidnap for ransom activities. The Australian government, in accordance with its policy, did not pay a ransom for Elliot's release. The family expressed their gratitude for the support and prayers they received during the ordeal, and they requested privacy for Ken Elliot to rest and regain his strength after his long captivity. Erdogan vows to keep cutting rates. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has pledged to continue his unconventional approach of lowering interest rates to combat high inflation if he is re-elected on May 28. In an exclusive interview with CNN, Erdogan stated that inflation would decrease alongside interest rates, emphasizing his belief that the two are directly correlated. His economic policies have faced criticism, particularly as Turkey experienced a sharp decline in its currency value and a surge in inflation last year. While central banks worldwide have been raising rates to control inflation, Turkey has taken the opposite approach. Erdogan's strong performance in the recent presidential election has caused concern among economists, who predict that a victory for him would result in continued high inflation and low interest rates. The soaring prices have had a detrimental impact on Turkish consumers and the economy, especially as the country recovers from a devastating earthquake. Analysts suggest that Turkey needs to address inflation, ensure financial stability, and pursue sustainable growth regardless of the election outcome. Shifting towards orthodox economic policies would expedite the disinflation process. Erdogan remains optimistic, highlighting Turkey's economic progress during his tenure and projecting further growth in GDP per capita.